Improved Racing's part number is EGM 132T4 for that oil cooler adapter and the block pieces and all that other fun stuff. During the process of this video, you're going to notice that the engine is going to be in a few pieces. Please keep in mind that I spliced in footage showing you what exactly you need to remove to do the process. So don't get freaked out and look at how a quarter of the engine is missing. I'm literally just splicing in what you need to do to install that oil cooler.
So right here we got some 13s on your hood, as you can see. So loosen and take out your 13 mils on your hood right here. What that's going to allow you to do is slide your hood off, so make sure you have some blankets somewhere, and I would suggest lying it with the finish up and away from anywhere someone might step on it, because if they step once on that hood, you will cry for years. You might as well start taking out this stuff first. So loosen, these shouldn't fall out. Just go ahead, take off all, what is that, 5 or 6 of the bolts, 6 bolts here, and remove the plastic here. Down here, squeeze, pull out, back, you just pull it, squeeze, slide that out. After that's out of the way, 8 mil, go ahead, get on these guys, loosen it off. And then you should have one more right here. There we go. Go ahead, pop this part out, just like that, and this out. They should both come out together-ish. There we go, one last piece. Next, reach down here past the airplane. You can squeeze and unplug your rad fan. Again, just have to squeeze it, and it might have a red, nope, it just slips out, and it just looks like that. Funny note, if you pull out a Dodge Pentastar fan, it is the same clip, but it will not operate the fan. Why, you might ask? Because they speak 2 different kinds of CAN bus. The more you know. Use the Christmas tree popper, just get it in here, and just keep working these out until they are free. After you do that, there's one clip over here, same thing. Slide this down here, and just get a little bit of a groove in there, just like that, and pop it out as well. After these are free, perfect. We're gonna free those 2. We're gonna go ahead and take out 10 mil here and the 10 mil here so we can slide our fan out of the way. So right here, make sure you're on reverse. Go ahead, throw a 10 mil on here and loosen that bolt off. Make sure you don't loosen your little bolt and lose it. Put it off to the side, go to the next one. So when you're popping this out, as long as you've pulled the bolt out of here, the bolt out of here, you should be able to just grab this, and it should just be on a couple hooks down there, and you get to just work it around the lines down here. I'm not gonna fight with this on the video, but yeah, now that this is loose, just work the fan out. Even though this is a me thing, not too many people have this, I like to lift my car a little bit first with the motorcycle jack, and then just watch your side splitter here. Make sure you use jack pucks. If you have never seen one before, well, they just literally, they're a little hockey puck with the little thing on here. You slip it in and you turn it sideways and it locks in. We're gonna lift the car a little bit here with this, so that way I can fit the jack under here. Now, if you're gonna be removing your wheels later on, I have a impact driver that I use to remove my rims, so I don't have to worry about loosening them off right now. But since if you don't have an impact driver that's going to be able to break the wheels loose, and you're going to have to use a ratchet, it'd be a good idea to loosen, don't take them out, just crack loose the lug nuts on your tires, so that way if you need to remove the wheels, you can. But if you don't, just make sure you put tape or a reminder somewhere, because if you forget to tighten those up and you go for your first ride, you'll end up in the dirt. So once you're under your vehicle, we're just looking right here. This is for oil. Throw a 15, loosen it off with a box wrench because it's right next to your oil cooler. Go ahead, put a bucket underneath it to catch all your oil. Again, there's this one, and then there's one at the very front right here. You might have to put a piece here if your jack stands in the way, just so it doesn't soak everything in oil. What we need to do is take off the torque tube tunnel tray, which is right here. So what you want to do is throw on, I believe those are 13s. Go ahead, throw the 13 or the 15, whatever it is on. And you're going to pull out all 20 some odd bolts out of there. There's 2 big ones. Leave the 2 big ones for now, but pull out all the little mini ones. Except for, if you take a look right there, you will see that there is a key hold one right here. Only loosen that one. The reason why is that keeps the plate from falling down and hitting you in the face. So leave those 2 in a couple threads, and then you'll be able to slide the plate back and it'll come down afterwards. We'll show you. See that 17 mil right there on that long metal strand? Take out both sides of that, remove that so your header will be free to come down when it needs to. Take out the two big ones from right here as well. From there, as I told you, I've left this plate up for a sec. See how I let those two bolts, leave them there. So that way when you have them all completely out, you can slide that plate back and controllably drop it out of the way. As you can see right there, I just took my V-bands off pretty easy, just 13 mils, because I converted these American Racing headers to V-bands. If you have regular American Racing headers, then you're just going to have two pinch bolts on each side, so you just release both of those and then you can slide the collars to loosen those. And if you have the factory exhaust, what I will tell you to do is I'm going to post a link in the description of this video to how I removed the factory exhaust headers, and that way you can watch that. And I would highly suggest you watch that if you don't know how to remove the factory exhaust headers. All right, let's remove a couple parts. First thing, drop all the 10 mils off of here. These 4 right here, and drop those 3. That plastic piece will be free. And then we're gonna take all the 8s out right here. So that way we can take this piece of plastic out right here. Makes it easier to look up into the engine bay, and also gets rid of this so you quit rubbing it. Mess with your wiring harness a little bit. Just come up here, get this on your exhaust manifold bolts, loosen them up. They should not be too tight. And yeah, just go ahead and loosen them off with a 10 mil and they should be free. So whatever you do before you completely loosen all the header bolts, make sure you come down here and disconnect. You have to slide these back, these safeties, and pinch and unplug. 5/8 socket. We're just gonna go down onto our spark plug here. Make sure it gets on the boot and then loosen it off. Take them out, put them somewhere safe, and then we'll pull out our header bolts. Under that support, there is a peacock valve or petcock valve, whatever you want to call it. It makes magical flying colors. And you grab it with your hands and you twist it. As you can see, we're currently twisting it. Once it's open, we'll be able to show you. And as much as you only want to crack it open a little bit, you'll always end up cracking it open all the way. Look at that. It actually goes through the main support and down. That's pretty cool. So it only goes down into one spot, unlike some where you open it up and it just splooshes all over, right, Tariq?
Yeah.
That's annoying. So just leave it, let it drain. And if you want to, you can burp the hose a little bit. Go ahead, put the plug back inside on your radiator petcock valve. From there, come over here, flex this up, move this over, and make sure this wire doesn't get broken. From here, I think it's best that we remove the bumper cover. What you want to do is scuff up, wreck your front splitter, all that other fun stuff. So let's spend a little extra time, remove the bumper cover. So take your T27, this is what I think this might be. I'll just double check and remove this one, remove this one, remove this one, and remove this one. And then we'll pop out these pop clips. Or if you want, you can pop these out first. All you need is a flat blade and you go into the groove right here and lift. So like I said, flat blade in here, just lift it a little bit. Don't go too crazy. And if you do that, then you should be able to just pop this either with your Christmas tree popper or this. This one doesn't help me because the person that had this before me decided to put the flat blade part on the inside. So when you re-put yours on, make sure you don't do that for yours and the next person's sake. All right, and then careful when lifting it. And like I said, try to do equal around the edges and just lift straight up. This is the piece that I'm talking about. See, you just wiggle a little bit. And we'll do that to this side. Just like that. Once you've popped it up that far, you can literally just wiggle this out. If it comes out, not a big deal. Pull this part out next. Do it with your fingers and yep, put it off to the side. Slide them back actually in together so that way you don't lose them. All you do is angle the wheels with steering wheel T15, come over here. What you want to do is loosen these off. What this is going to allow us to do is pop the wing off, but not only the wing, we're also going to have to probably pop this plastic clip off the front possibly to be able to pop our bumper off. So we just go right here, do this like so, and one more. There we go. All these should kind of come out now. I have this extra fender here, so if you have anything other than this, then you probably won't have these on the side, possibly. You have one like here. You should have 3 bolts right here, and if they're on a beveled or a tapered lock, what it should do is sit on it, so you just loosen the Allen keys, and then it slips down like that, and you just lift it off and go put it somewhere safe. So when we pulled the plastic off down here, you might as well just continue, get those last 3 bolts there. Now when you look up in here, look, there's more, and these are where your actual bumper is mounted to. So you're gonna actually take those bolts out to loosen the bumper after you get in through that plastic shield. So go ahead and pop out all those ones right there. Feel down here, it feels like a handle. That hole that's there, pull it forward. When you have this forward, you're gonna notice right behind this one clip is a clip. So you need to squish it towards you so it slides in. There's another one that's right here, slides in, and look it. That one might be nice. If not, you have to do one more time there and then disconnect the plug. So as you can see, after you get it forward, safety clip, pull, squeeze, pull out. You tuck that in here for right now because you're not gonna have to worry about it. And then put your marker safe and check this out. I did this just by doing that. Look at that. So you can do that on both sides too while you're at it. Go over here, just kind of untuck it from here, and then it'll allow you to get at that light easier. So when you go over here and you pull this back, just work your hand in here and see, you're just working these clips out from right here. Mine came out pretty easy actually. I'm gonna go to the other side and do the exact same thing. If you look right here, see how there's a tab holding? If you want, you can use something to kind of push it forward so it comes out, but we just need to get that in. Mine's already pushed in here, and we're gonna go ahead and wiggle this out. Let's show you exactly what we did. Plastic panel popper, jammed it in on an angle. The first one comes out like a cinch. Like I didn't even have to do much. You can even reach that one from right here. Remember how I showed you? You can push on that and then push it in and lift the first corner out. Once you get that out, if you actually put a panel popper right down here, you should be able to see how I'm flexing this. Flex this one out just like that to get the last one. It is tough. When you have the bumper off, I tried to record this. There was no way, there was no lighting or anything. You have this switch. I just actually took this one off so I could show you. You have to use your hook pick or your flat blade, put the safety back, squeeze here, wiggle the connector, slide it out. Do that on both sides. When you do that, you now have the cameras disconnected. So make sure you do that. We already popped the lights out. First, if you really wanted to, if you flex that bumper forward, you can actually disconnect those cameras before you take the bumper off. So do keep that in mind that if you are trying to do this alone, to do that. This is a lot harder to do than the rear bumper. I can do the rear bumper alone. I could probably do this one alone, but it would be a heck of a lot harder and more chance of scratching your paint. If you're worried about scratching your paint, throw a little bit of painter's tape around here, and there you go. All right, now that we've got the front bumper out of the way, take the bolts out on the oil cooler. They should be, I believe they are anyway, T40s.
With our improved racing kit, you can see we have the oil thermostat, which is going to replace the really badly placed oil cooler, which is also has coolant going through it, and it's located right beside the header. It's probably the worst spot to put an oil cooler. Either way, this goes into your block. I'll show you where. Now, when I had my block serviced and machined, I had them leave this piece loose. If you didn't, it could be a little fun to get out. You're going to need a big socket. I'll show you where it's located. It's right there by the knock sensor. So that's why we're doing this with the header out. If you had the socket big enough, you would wrap it up and around there. But for me, since I don't have to worry about it, all I have to do is reach up and unscrew it with my fingers. For you, it won't be that easy, but it's surprisingly light when it comes out. That's the first thing you're gonna be like, what? Really? That is kind of light. Anyways, take this out. You no longer need this fitting. We're gonna plug that hole with a fitting that comes with it. So just cover it in a little bit of liquid gasket so that way we can press that up and on there. As you can see, it comes with a massive Allen key. I'm gonna go grab the Allen key size. I believe it's probably a 30 that fits in there, but I'll tell you. And as you can see, they put some sort of Teflon on there. I'll leave it up to you. You can either leave that Teflon on there, or what I'm gonna do is put my liquid stuff so that way it creates a nice liquid gasket that turns into a rubbery substance. And I'll show you what that looks like. It's just a thread sealant. This is what I'm talking about. Just take a little bit of it, line the threads with it just on one line, and as you screw it in, it's going to tighten up and do its thing. Take your torque wrench, set it to 45 foot-pounds right there, and go crank it in. You can see it's got a little bit of that white oozing out now, which is perfect. Crank that down to about 45 foot-pounds there, and then now down here, when I made this gasket for my oil pan, I noticed that it's sticking out a little bit. Make sure you clean up the service and just make sure that you clean up right here too. I'm just going to take a little bit of an X-Acto and make sure that we're flush and in line so that way our new piece will sit flush. By the way, if I didn't say it before, the Allen key size is a 17 millimeter. Let's quickly explain the fittings. This right here that I put the block off in, this one is going to go to my future turbo kit. This is going to be a bypass for this thermostat, and it just basically allows for you to put a sensor here or an out to anything. And like I said, that's what I'll go out to my turbos with. This is the in, this is the out. As you can see, I suggested and selected on the website that I went with AN10 fittings. So what they gave me was AN10 to ORB, because it has an O-ring on it, 8. And so all you do is you thread them in and then tighten them down to 25 foot-pounds. Use your Allen key and thread these screws right through the gasket. Don't try to pop them through, just thread them and they'll screw through the gasket. Once it gets to this, make sure we have 2 clean surfaces, and I would just go under the vehicle and thread these in real carefully. Again, these go down to 10 foot-pounds. Sure looks pretty, eh? Now that it's up there, whatever you do, make sure there's no gaps. If there's any gap between that and the block, it will leak. So just make sure there isn't a gap. From there, I'm not going to be installing this yet, but on your radiator where the oil cooler used to be, slide this cap on there and tighten this down so that way no fluid can escape. I will show you that later on in my video here because I have to install a new radiator and I'll put it on the radiator when I put that on. This is the improved racing part. Slip it on right here, and then we put this piece on over top. We might have to loosen this worm gear a bit, but all that happens is worm gear goes on here and make sure it doesn't come off. And that's all there is to that piece. If you take a look, I shot some AN10 line through there, and later on I'll finish these ends and I'll make either a small cut out right here so the lines will come in flush, and then up onto my oil cooler, which is going to be mounted right here. Right now though, I've got those 2 lines just pushed right through. They come down, they'll be strapped over here on that strap right here. That's our sway bar. Not really worried about our steering rack, but it's going to be just above the steering, or just under the steering rack, and sway bar come right here and then go down to our oil thermostat. The other thing I picked up is I picked up this heat protector. So what this allows us to do is cut it to length, slide it over those lines, and then we've got heat protection on the lines from the headers. Look how good that blends with the braid. Anyways, you just squeeze it a little bit, keep pushing it on. I'm probably gonna put at least a foot of it on. You could even do a little more, because what it'll also do is be abrasive protection. So if you're worried about it rubbing up against anything and getting destroyed, you can actually feed that in as deep as you want, and there you go. All right, you can try using multiple items to cut this. You can even use the good old trusty hacksaw if you need to. Make sure you only have a little bit of tape there, and that's just going to keep that line from fraying as we put it on. Make sure the line's clean. Take this, use your palm, and just press it in. And keep going until it's flush and in line with the threads. Just like that. Always start with a nice, clean, inline thread. You don't want to have an angle. All right, next thing. Put this in here. Tighten it up. Remember, not too crazy, because if you do, you could bend the fitting in, which wouldn't be good. Start threading this in. Remember to keep pressure on it. All right. As you do that, a little bit of Loctite now. That way, our fitting won't back off, and we know we'll get a good seal. Oh. Okay. I love this so much more than PTFE lines. PTFE lines are just brutal. If you've ever had to do the PTFE version of this with the acorns, you know exactly what I mean. Okay. Almost there. This is the hardest part, and also where you want to be the most careful, so that way you can bring the fitting in. And if you're worried about scoring the other side, you want to make sure you don't rub the other side. Almost there. And maybe 2 more turns. Max. maybe one. Bring it half. There. Just gonna line up the fitting and call it a day. There we go, first fitting is on. So, don't slide this up quite yet. Leave it over here. I'll tell you why. When we first start the car, we want to be able to see if it's dripping. If it is, we got to tighten it or change the fitting. Or just redo this one. This is not a PTFE fitting. You can do PTFE lines. What I'm showing you is the not PTFE, so it doesn't have the nylon on the inside. There's no need for these lines. If we're doing something with more oil pressure or something insane like a hydraulic line, then we'd do it. Anyways, as you can see, it's just like that. Now right here, if I were you, what I'd end up doing is just putting a 90 here. So it'll come and then you can 90 it, and that way you can keep both your lines together by the time it comes right here. And it keeps it from getting snagged on anything. Now that we have both oil lines up, I would go ahead and screw in an oil filter and make sure you have clearance to get it on and off properly. Remember, oil filters are just hand tight and should be lubricated on the ring. I just used a little bit of assembly lube. You can also use engine oil. Well, I'm happy with that. I can get the oil filter tool on, no problem. So from here, I'm gonna go and actually try and put the header back in. I want to make sure that the header is going to clear and we're not gonna have any touching or binding issues. After I do that, then I can button up this area and move to the front. It's absolutely crazy how much easier it is to get that header up. Literally all I did is I put the tip just up onto the mount here, and now right from the top you can reach down and lift the header up and put it on. And again, don't forget your new gasket. Remember to read how it says exhaust side down. That way you can't mess it up. First one, then those two, 18 foot-pounds. Inside to outside. After you've done that, let's go ahead and get these spark plugs in. Don't forget your dielectric grease on the ceramic part of it, and we'll just thread those bad boys in. Go ahead, move the pipes and hoses around just a little bit and just work it around everything. It's not too hard, just patience, because of course it's gonna catch on a few things. If you want to, you can even just quickly pop this in, so that way you don't have to worry. Now that we've done that, there's the spot down over here for your wiring harness to click into. Just do that and resync in that. Does it have a safety? No, this one just clips in. Sweet. Next thing, slip-ons, since that's probably what you have, and you could even crank those down a little bit, get them nice and tight. Don't use Loctite or anything, because if you do, what'll end up happening is you'll never get them apart again. They're already hard enough to get apart, and sometimes you have to cut the bolts when you take them out. And I'm sure you know that from when you remove them. Anyways, I quickly put that in. Now I just need to plug in my O2s and strap my wires out of the way. Other than that, that's the whole bottom end. All right, I've marked out where I'm going to be putting my oil cooler. This is a custom bracket I had a friend make on a CNC machine. I measured it out. It's going to sit right here. I want it to sit right here. I want to leave this spot open so airflow gets to the AC cooler and the radiator up here and on the sides, and of course it'll pass through the oil cooler and still get some in there. It's not like it's a big solid object. Now, to do this safely, especially since I have to drill up, I don't want to get aluminum shavings in here, so I'm going to take out these 4 bolts right here, and then probably, we'll see how it goes. I might have to release some straps right here. I just want to kind of shimmy it out of the way if I can, and I'll cover it with a bag, because I just don't want a whole bunch of shavings to end up in here, and also gives me a nice shot straight to drilling. After you've got that plate sorted out, you can come down here, and don't try to loosen this side. Take them out from the bottom. This is a welded plate. So take all 4 10 mils out from under here so we can see if we can get this cooler moved. If this is up here like this, you just have to push this back, push this towards the back, it'll bow that, and then you pull this forward and it'll release these 3 hooks. Just work them out. Just hang this down here, grab a piece of cardboard and just cover it, or you can tape it up, do whatever you want. Just cover this
So that way we can come up here with our drill and make our 2 marks, so that way it's into something solid. All right, so as you can see here, we have our cap screws. These are 1/4 20s, and I've got cap screw, washer, then another washer, then spring washer, then nylocks. That's overdoing it, but I don't want this to fail. I drilled those holes through, and then right here we have bolt going up, we have washer, rubber piece, which I'll show you. I cut them in half, so rubber, rubber, then it's gonna get squished up here, washer, spring washer, and nut. So I'll tighten it from down here, and then I'll sink it up to here. And that is how my oil cooler mount works. Again, I can't tell you where to buy this because I had it custom made for this application. If you're interested in it and I get enough interest, just post in the comment section and I can get the gentleman to fabricate some up. All right, so the oil cooler is mounted. Let's go over how I did it. That's that plate that I showed you before. We have the hex cap screw heads, and then we have a washer, and then it goes a spring washer, and lock nut, which is a nylock nut. And then they just tie in here. I went a little long with these screws. I guess I was just being a little bit extreme. And then I have, so these are M6s. In the back are M8s. And they come up, and I have it so the bolt side is up, so it's easier for the nut here. Either way, it goes also, I got these rubber spacers. As you can see, they're like this. I cut 2 of them in half and used those for the base one. And then for the one that's between the frame, I used a full one. That way, if there's ever impact, it can flex a little bit, and it also isolates it. If you look at your radiator and everything else, they have isolators as well. That's why it's got isolators. Either way, part number for those, these are the energy suspension ones, but you can use literally anything. All right, finishing that off, again, was just bolt, washer, and then rubber spacer that was cut in half, then a full spacer comes up here, then it's spacer, spring washer, and again, nylock nut. And look at that. It just flexes a little bit for if it gets hit, but that is a strong brace. I'm putting a lot in there to make it move. From there, because I don't want to block too much airflow, what I'm going to be doing is putting some 45s on here, like this. So that way, they aim straight up. Now I'm going to actually notch a bit of that plastic out after I'm done, so that way it's just gonna have a little bit of the hose going through the plastic. But I'd rather notch the plastic up here than to, of course, go through here and block more airflow to the radiator. So like I said, this way it's just a little small impedance rather than running my lines right here and then blocking that whole area from airflow. We're at a point now where if you have the same oil cooler, this is not going to affect you. What it is, you need to know your in and out because of your lines. You have to make sure the out goes to the out on your temp piece that we put in from Improved Racing, and you have to know your in. In this, if you have an oil cooler like this, there's probably no in and out. If you have the one where it has a top and then a bottom, you have to make sure, because it's usually in here, out on the bottom. And then of course, there's other ones where it'll cycle through like this. And once again, you have to make sure that you get the in and then the out on the bottom. If you do it the other way around, what'll end up happening is it'll try to push against gravity and it'll affect your oil pressure, and you don't want that. All right, so we've got a case of break-in oil here. We're gonna throw that in our oil cooler here, just making sure my funnel's completely clean. It looks clean, but again, just dust and everything else. You don't want to put foreign materials, or as much as you can. You don't want to put as much foreign materials in as you can. Anyways, what we want to do is pre-fill the oil cooler. So just do this, and then we'll watch the other side. Oh, we'll wait for it. It's going in a little lower. Oh, again, it fills pretty slow. When you're doing this, literally just little droplets at a time, especially near the end. Otherwise, we'll see if it tries to overflow this time, but you'll literally, just a little bit at a time. You can watch the other side and you'll see it start bubbling and the fluid levels are gonna come up. We just wanna pre-fill it the most that we can, so that way it doesn't take so much from our dry sump.
All right, if you take a look here, I've got them up at the 2 inlets. There's a tiny bit of air there, but that's fine. It's gonna get pushed through here from the oil pump when it goes. We just wanted to preload this. I mean, it didn't even take as much as I thought it was gonna take, so that's kind of nice. Oil cooler is now full. You can see the same amount. This is a good way to check too, to make sure your oil cooler isn't leaking. So pre-fill it with oil, so that way we can look at it and make sure there's nothing seeping all the way around it. Again, if you spill little, don't let that bother you, so you just wipe it up and then wait and see, and inspect it with a flashlight on both sides if you can. Trust me when I say check it now, because if you don't fill this and then all of a sudden you start your car up and you've got a pinhole leak, it's going to pressure all that fluid through there, and then hopefully you don't have your bumper off. I'll be leaving my bumper off, of course, for when we start it, because I want to make sure that we have absolutely no leaks. So now that we've got it to here, any little bit of spillage, chances are, if you've never done this before, you are going to spill, because it's just going to be burping and it's going to shoot a little bit of fluid out. So just make sure you clean it up so you don't actually think when you start this, oh man, I've got a leak, there's fluid on the floor like this. No, 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 no. Go around, make sure you wipe up everything. What I'm going to be doing from this point is just literally being meticulous, going around this engine for the next couple minutes and making sure I have every single droplet wiped up, and keeping a monitor of anywhere where I might see any fluid, so that way I don't freak out thinking it's a leak later on, because this could be definitely seen as a leak if there's any fluid caught in here and you're like, oh my gosh, it's coming out, when really it's not. Anyways, go ahead from here and tie your fittings on. And this oil coolers thing, like I said, the in and out don't really matter. It's just gonna push from one side to the other. But remember, in through the top, out through the bottom. It'll go like this or whatever. It'll push and go out through the bottom. Or if it's this one, it pushes in through the top and out through the bottom. Either way, that way you're letting gravity work, and the heat will rise. You might be wondering, well, if the heat's rising, why would you do that? Because if the heat's rising, it's pushing the cooler fluid down here. If that makes sense. All right, let's tighten these up, get it going. Yeah, I've got them going through here. I'll still clean this up a little bit, but most importantly, you're not going to see any of that. This is what you're going to see through the grill. The biggest thing is making sure these lines don't rub against here, because you don't want them to chafe against the metal. And as you can see, I've got space from the plastic. You want to make sure there's space from the plastic. For right here, I even went as far as putting a protective coating, even though I'm going to do some zap strapping to keep the lines kind of central as possible. I just want to keep it there. But as you can see, I hollowed that out, and by doing so, it's going to allow me, and I had to cut out that piece a little bit. I'll probably clean up these cuts, by the way. These are just rough. But like I said, I wanted to be able to just drop this back in here. Well, let's take a look. I did a little bit of modification. I need to clean up my cuts, but let's drop this on here and take a look at that. This will come down right there. That one will come down over here. And these are going to press a little bit on the lines. This I'm fine with because they're smooth surfaces. And if anything, I can actually pop little holes in here and use them as zap strap holes or tie wrap holes. So I don't make anyone too angry by always saying zap strap. Anyways, and then the next thing you want to do is make sure, look down there, see how nothing's rubbing those lines? Make sure you have at least a finger width of gap, so that way if this does move around, it's not going to rub up against here. And if you have some foam tape, one thing you can do is put foam tape all along here on all your edges, even though these really aren't that sharp. Like, it's just you want to make sure they're not going to cut through or rub through the braided line over time. That's your biggest thing. So that's why I want to make sure there's adequate enough space. If you take a look here, no more clearance issues. It's perfect. Well, there's our final look. I strapped it right here. Strapped it right here so that way it's holding on to these two. You can even, if you want to, throw a band of electrical tape on each of these hoses. I probably might end up doing that. Just throwing, like I said, just so it gives just that extra layer of security. And again, these are abrasive resistant sheaths right here, and they are really strong. They're also for heat, so that way it keeps heat away. So again, they go here and then through the plastic. You can see I've got it off to the corner there, into the side, comes down, away from the pivoting points of the steering rack. So it comes down and away from the exhaust headers. Again, more heat shielding. And if we come under here,
you can see them right there. And again, they just go, there's the heat shields right there. It's right there on the tip of the piece there. And again, I just want to cover the whole line. Now, the reason why I have that exposed right there on both sides is so that way I can see if it's going to leak, because I want to know before I put this whole thing back together. The dry sump is just something you do not want to leak. So now that we've got all that done and those tightened up, technically we can pour some oil into the engine and make sure that we have no leaks there either. So make sure that you've tightened your drain plugs to about 15 foot-pounds, or just, you know, if you've done an oil change. And let's go ahead and throw some braking oil in. Again, I'd probably throw in 9.5 quarts. You're probably going to end up needing more, but again, we can at least start it on 9.5 quarts.
Again, only using braking oil because this is a fresh motor. If you don't, make sure you're using, what is it, 530 synthetic. All right, I've poured half this water jug out into here. The thing is, it only comes up to here. We actually want a little bit more than just 50-50 if you want. Again, Corvette or GM, whatever you want to say, they recommend a 60-40 mix. If you're not driving in winter, I can't see it being a big deal, but again, it's probably also for if you're on the racetrack a lot, so that way you can keep your temps down. I will let you mix to what ratio you would like. As long as you're between 50-50 and 60-40, I'd say you're golden. For this, all you do is keep filling and filling slowly. As you'll see, it'll be full and then it'll go down, because it'll go down here and start filling up your radiator and everything else. So just keep pouring slowly and filling it back up. Leave it for a little bit. Fill it back up, leave it for a little bit, and it's going to slowly go through. When we're done, we'll top it off once we start the car.
After you've gone ahead and you've topped those all up, it's time to start your car. Let it start to warm up to operating temperature. Keep an eye on your radiator fluid and top it up. You don't have to do much with your oil once it has 9 to 9.5 quarts in it. All you want to do is bring that up to 176 for the oil. For the coolant, just as it cycles with the water pump, top up as it does. Push air bubbles and things out. After you're like, okay, coolant seems pretty good, put the cap back on the coolant. Well, it gets up to its operating temperature in full. When it comes to your oil, once it hits 176 to 180, that oil thermostat that's built into the improved racing spot is going to open up. It's going to cycle oil through. What's going to end up happening is your pan and everything is going to drop a little bit from filling up the lines and pushing out all the air bubbles. What you need to do is go ahead and top it up. The procedure, I believe, is 176 to 180. Turn the car off, leave it for 5 minutes, top up the oil sump tank. Or if you have a wet sump, go ahead and top that up. After you've done that, you're done with your fluids. Now, you're probably wondering, Rich, why don't you have the front bumper and the hood on? Well, this is going for tuning, and I need this open so that way we can monitor all fluids, because I did a full engine rebuild on this car, which I'm sure you've seen in that video. So, that's why it's cut all over the place. This is where I'm going to end it. Pretty easy from this point. Just watch it in reverse. The bumper, you might have to play a little bit with it when you're lining it up. Just be careful. It'll be fine. Make sure you plug it in proper, and that's all there is to it. Thanks again for watching. Press the like if it helps you out, and subscribe for more.